Hi, my name is Marcus Saikaley, and today I'll be presenting a network meta-analysis of upper extremity stroke rehabilitation randomized controlled trials, incorporating the Fugl-Meyer upper extremity scale as an assessment tool. The impact of rehabilitation on motor impairment. The remediation of motor deficits post-stroke is a major focus of past and current research, with the evidence-based review of stroke rehabilitation reporting 1,125 RCTs investigating upper extremity rehabilitation alone. And within this evidence base exists over 50 different interventions that have been used. Finding out which intervention is the most effective at improving motor impairment is a major focus of the field. The Fugl-Meyer is currently the gold standard for measuring motor impairment and has been recommended by stroke rehabilitation experts to be included in every future clinical trial for the assessment of upper extremity motor impairment. The standardization and adoption of this outcome measure will allow better comparisons between interventions. Actually determining which intervention is best, however, can be a difficult task. Comparing multiple interventions within a single clinical trial can be expensive, and comparing all the interventions within one trial is simply not feasible. Thankfully, network meta-analysis is a statistical technique that allows us to compare a large number of different interventions against each other that have never been directly compared in a clinical trial. To do so, a common comparator is selected. As shown in the figure on the bottom left, trials where intervention A are compared with intervention C can be used with trials where intervention B are compared with intervention C to generate indirect evidence for the A versus B comparison that was not present in any study. On the right-hand side here, we see a much more complicated version of this model whereby different drugs are compared to the common comparator placebo, and there also exists direct comparisons within the model. To do so, we performed a literature search identifying randomized controlled trials investigating upper limb rehabilitation post-stroke. Importantly, these trials needed to include the Fugl-Meyer upper extremity outcome assessment and needed the control group to be conventional therapy, as this was selected as the common comparator. Here we can see the presentation of the network graphs with all of the interventions and their interconnecting nodes. Here, represented in green, is the model which contains all 150 trials included in the analysis. The colored portions represent multi-arm trials which contribute to multiple nodes, and the size of the line represents the number of RCTs included in that comparison. Abbreviations are listed below. Here, we have the network graph for the acute model from 0 to 1 months post-stroke in red, and here we have the subacute model from 0 to 3 months post-stroke, indicated with a light blue. And finally, we have our chronic model for participants greater than 6 months post-stroke, indicated in purple. Here, we present forest plots for the relative rankings of the interventions for each of the 4 models. The first point to note is that modified constraint-induced movement therapy, MCIMT, is the most effective in the all model, acute model, and subacute model, with bilateral arm training and functional electrical stimulation coming in second and third. Importantly, the relative rankings of these interventions seem to change in the chronic phase. Another important note is that the MD column represents the mean difference estimated on the Fugl-Meyer, and as shown by the minimal clinically important differences listed on the bottom, many of these interventions in the acute and subacute phase surpass the highest reported threshold, and a few interventions in the chronic phase also surpass the lower reported threshold. In conclusion, many of the therapies studied had a significant effect on motor impairment as measured by the Fugl-Meyer upper extremity scale, with modified constraint-induced movement therapy, bilateral arm training, and functional electrical stimulation appearing to be the most effective. However, the relative effectiveness of the interventions may not be the same during different time periods post-stroke, and this could provide an area for future analysis. With respect to limitations, because the model relies on indirect evidence, these results should be interpreted with some degree of caution. In addition, because some interventions had a low number of RCTs during the subgroup analysis, these results should also be interpreted with caution. And finally, many of the trials had a low sample size and were of moderate methodological quality as assessed by the Pedro scale. Thank you.